welcome to the ReWatcher in the Multiverse of Badness. I'm your cult leader Tom Pot, and I just watched Daredevil, and I'm not going to the multiverse myself, but I'm also not going to go to Hell's Kitchen alone. That place can be pretty damn dangerous, which is why I'm joined by a very special guest. Now, if you've seen him in the ring under the name Matt Schuyler, you know he's something of a daredevil himself. But to join me today and agreeing to watch this film, he must truly be a man without fear. Ladies and gentlemen, making his return to the channel, Aaron Cregan.
Hey, what's up? What's the crack? How you doing?
I'm going to ask right off the bat. This is one of the more modern films we're covering in this season. Have you seen this before or no?
I saw it once when I was very young. And after growing up into more of a comic book reader, retroactively went back and was like, yeah, let's never do that again. Let's never watch that again.
That is
Pretty fair. Do you remember out of random happenstance, did you see the director's cut or did you see the theatrical cut? Because I made the very clear distinction here that we were going to watch the director's cut. Which one had you seen before?
Theatrical cut, to be honest. Yeah, because it was just, I think it was like an extra vision thing, you know?
Well,
Here's a DVD, and enjoy yourself.
I think they're sort of trying to erase the theatrical cut, because I bought the Blu-ray for this. No mention it's the director's cut, but it's a director's cut. So it feels like to me they're kind of retroactively being like, this is the one to watch. It's not as bad as you think. Because, yeah, this theatrical cut and the director's cut, there is a lot of differences. There's like, talk about a cut, it's a half an hour longer.
You really feel that extra half hour.
Yeah, that is true. It does feel a little bit too long. But yeah, this cut, and I will say I tried to do my due diligence and go back and watch the theatrical cut as well. I just, it felt similar enough where I was like, I get it. But what you get with the director's cut, it's more brutal, more violent, it's cooler, more coolio. Here it goes. For all the Snyder Cut people, this was one of the first changes in director's cut that also led to an R-rated cut. This was R-rated when it came out the year after Daredevil premiered in 2003. And I guess I asked if you could come up with maybe 3 words to sum up the film. Have you any thoughts on those? Do you have those?
The words that I could come up with was, that's fucking coolio.
Here it goes.
I saw him immediately and was just completely taken out of it.
Batman and Robin star coolio to you, sir.
My genuine 3 words are not that bad.
Yeah, and again, I'm in a weird position here because all these films, I kind of shit on a lot of bad films. And when I named this, I called it Badness. I was talking specifically the public perception of them. And I put in Daredevil. But I have the softest of soft spots for this film. This film, and I wish you could at least have the benefit of saying you were younger when you saw this for the first time. I saw this in my 20s, and I was like, I kind of like this. I don't have childhood ignorance to hide behind. And it basically is what introduced me to Daredevil and got me to find the character who is now my favourite superhero of all time.
Oh, sick.
So
I'm going to have a hard time kicking the shit out of this movie, even though it rightfully deserves it. But I guess we should get into the story. As we said, came out in 2003. It was directed by Mark Steven Johnson, who is the director and writer, and also a fucking liar. Because I did some research on this Mark Steven Johnson, this 2 first names Mr. Johnson. He went on to write and direct Ghost Rider. And on the DVD extras, he says,
The reason that I like Daredevil more than any other Marvel comic character or any comic character is that...
Yeah, Daredevil, my favourite superhero. And wouldn't you know it, Press Tour comes around for Ghost Rider. Oh yeah, Ghost Rider, my favourite superhero. I fucking got you, Mark. You're fucking done in this industry as far as I'm concerned.
I cannot believe it. What a liar.
Can you, I don't want to shock you here. People in Hollywood lie.
Just when you think you can trust people, Hollywood go and lie to you.
I would say it's the worst thing Hollywood has ever done.
Oh yeah, without it. With the movie or the lying? Because I think the movie could be the worst.
I'm just going to say yes. There's a general yes to that. But we start with our Daredevil film, and it gets immediately very dated. Maybe I'm going to quote Jurassic Park here, or at least throw in the Jurassic Park quote of,
so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
CGI in this era, it feels like they just used it regardless of whether it looked good. And we get a weird CGI intro of the city. It looks like a Windows screensaver, just not very good.
I did take notes.
Oh.
And what I thought was that the intro looked very similar to the Scooby-Doo movies. That same kind of going through.
I think you're actually right.
The alleyway there, it looked very Scooby-Doo.
I think what's worse is
I think it looked better in Scooby-Doo.
They even like in this, all they did was use like the lights for the name. Scooby-Doo had like ghost credits that were bursting and they hit walls and stuff. Bring me back for Scooby-Doo.
There you go. That's our announcement of what we're doing next, Scooby-Doo, I guess. And I'm totally okay with that. But yeah, that's just our opening titles, which we begin, and I'm going to use a very fancy term because this is a very technical and fancy artsy channel. We begin in medias res, which means that we start in the middle of the action. I'm going to quote some famous texts that have used this. Homer's Odyssey, Paradise Lost, Daredevil. Which means, in other words, we start towards the end. We start with a battered up Matt Murdock being embraced by a priest for what seemingly feels like he's about to die. And, you know, we don't get an awkward record scratch. Thankfully, that term hadn't really begun yet. But we do get, I guess, strangely, the introduction to our superhero. Which means that it has an unintended effect of our reveal being super kind of underwhelming. Am I wrong there? Do you agree with that or no?
Thing with this was like there's a moment later on where you see him standing there as Daredevil for the first time, and when I saw it, I kind of went, "Yeah, I know." I saw it at the start.
Yeah, I guess they fucked it up because, I mean, now is as good a time as any to talk about the Daredevil costume, which, it's a tough costume to get right. But this is like awkward red leather. The DD. Here's another thing about a guy complaining about someone not having double D's in their chest. Way, but the double D is off to the side. It's really small. It's like a weird leather jumpsuit thing.
Like, yeah, he's doing this as a blind guy, but like, doesn't mean you can't have a bit of style. Like,
it does. He does look like someone who dressed himself without sight. I mean, realistically, I mean, just be glad they didn't try the yellow costume because that would have been hideous in the early 2000s. But the cowl is also really weird. Like, it just is such a very strange looking material. His head looks really small in it. It's something that they really always seem. I always thought this would be really hard to adapt in live action, and they managed to at least do it in the Netflix show. Is the eyes of Daredevil are generally speaking the same color.
A little bit like Darth Vader's helmet in episode 4, you know, that like it's slightly more red so you can see, look, there's eyes there.
Exactly. That's how it should look. And again, I don't know if it's that they didn't bother or didn't care that much, but they really did him no favors. Ben Affleck, that is, who, you know, Ben Affleck gets a lot of shit. And again, we have to contextualize this movie. This came out in the middle of the Bennifer era. It came out in 2003. I think it came out just before, it was either just before or just after Jiggly, which kind of ruined his career for years to come. And like, I think he's okay. Again, I think if the material was better, he'd be all right. What did you think of Ben Affleck as Daredevil in this?
I don't mind Ben Affleck, but I think he should just stay away from superhero movies. His Matt Murdock had no charisma almost. You know, he was kind of just flat a lot of the time. He seemed more. This is a really minor thing, but like he seemed more depressed than blind to me.
That would be fair.
Charlie Cox was very good at making me think he was actually blind. Ben Affleck just looked like he was moping around the place.
He is so kind of somber and down when he's Matt Murdock as well. And that would be kind of okay if they gave him some kind of development or interesting moments. But there's one moment where he actually does have like a crack a smirk. Kind of goes like, huh.
And I was like, that was clearly Ben Affleck breaking. Like, that sounds like Ben Affleck, not Charlie Cox. Or not Charlie Cox. Not Matt Murdock, I should say.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got Charlie Cox. I got Cox in the brain. Whoops.
Whoa.
This is going to get an 18s rating. This is the darker director's cut of the ReWatcher.
You nearly got your wish about him not doing a superhero movie, because in 2006 he stated he would never reprise the Daredevil role, having felt by playing a superhero in Daredevil, I have inoculated myself from ever playing another superhero. Wearing costume was a source of humiliation for me and something I wouldn't want to do again soon. Thankfully, that all ended well with Batman.
And we never saw him again.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
We're all pulling for you, Ben. Now that we're back in the Bennifer days of yore, we're definitely getting a bit of nostalgia.
Maybe I can put Bennifer in the title of this and it'll get more hits, but I don't know.
Definitely.
So
you won't believe what Matt Schuyler says about Bennifer.
Oh my God! Yeah, we're going to get Matt Schuyler to cut a promo after.
So let's get into the origin, and I will say something I actually think this film does well is Daredevil's origin up to a point. We get him as a child. And basically it is here we go. So people would say I actually do read comics. It's the Man Without Fear from Frank Miller. It is exactly that. His dad is a boxer. They changed his name from Battling Jack Murdoch to Jack the Devil Murdoch. I'm totally fine with that. They like the justification for Daredevil's name is really shit normally. Like in the Man Without Fear, it's literally that kids are like Daredevil, Daredevil, and I'm like, is that an insult? That's kind of cool. Although there is a really weird mention after that when he gets bullied by fucking AJ Soprano of all people, where they do a really weird double cut where it's like, I dare ya, and then it zooms in close to his face and he goes, I dare ya. So,
yeah, that was so bizarre.
Go ahead, fight me. I dare you. Yeah, Murdoch. I dare you.
The origin, I think, is generally done well. They do a really good connection to his father. His father is like, you know, I hope that you'll never have to get into a boxing ring and you can go to school and do business for yourself.
You don't hit nothing but books, get me?
Disobeys his father's wishes and goes up and beats people up anyway. So it's like, yeah, maybe don't hit the strong father-son connection and then just immediately break it. He finally gets his powers after getting squirted in the eye by toxic radiation. All his senses are good. I do think the senses are done well. We'll get to that in a sec. He gets bullied by these three guys, and this is meant to be his comeuppance, right? And he has his cane. The main bully, as I mentioned, AJ Soprano, because it was the 2000s and there's two Sopranos cast members in this. He starts slapping him with a stick a couple of times, and that's it for him. One guy he kind of sends gently into the bin bags, and this seemingly were the two people who were the meanest to him. They got off very lightly, and then there's one guy just standing in the background, and he does a fucking spinning kick into the guy's head. I'm like, where did that come from? That was really harsh, that poor guy.
I am 99% sure the two kids with him are not the same two kids from the first scene.
So that means there's even lesser reason for that guy to get fucking Street Fightered in the face or whatever happened to him.
This is the first time this guy met Matt Murdock. He just got kicked in the head.
Yeah, he's
just hanging with these guys like, hey, what's going on? Oh, hey, that's not cool that you kicked that blind kid. Whoop, bang! Brain injury.
That scene in particular is the first moment that I went, oh no. I'm just like, this kid is very calm for being able to kick someone's ass for the first time, you know? He's not like freaking out or whatever, because, you know, we've seen him do the whole montage thing, which I hated, to be honest, because I love Stick. Stick is the man.
We never get an explanation for Daredevil being able to fight, really. He gets a bit of boxing training. It doesn't explain why he'd be able to do a spinning kick or any of the later stuff.
You're confused because the radioactive waste clearly has like ninja force inside it. There's some sort of ooze mentality to this. Teenage ninja ooze could probably make a turtle super strong, you know?
Radical!
That's exactly something I was going to mention, because like if you don't follow the comics, Turtles started as a riff on Frank Miller's Daredevil. In fact, in the first issue of the Turtles comic, the same ooze is seen as kind of blinding Matt Murdock, then bounces into a sewer, but they never mention that because of legal reasons. They start the first shot we get in this film is a rat. I was like, oh my god, it's Splinter, here we go.
He's a radical rat.
The lack of Stick really bothered me because Matt Murdock went, yeah, so because I'm blind, the rest of my senses are heightened, which means I can kick ass now. And like they do some weird montage with when he gets the thing in his eyes, like they turn his veins red.
Yeah, it's like a weird CGI thing that's totally... Again, it looks like something from X-Men. There's parts where he like will jump off a building and fall 50 feet and he's just fine. And I guess it's superhero logic, but Daredevil, you know, he's a guy. Like, he would break his legs, like...
They never mention that the radioactive waste gives him all this super stuff. It's just, I'm blinded, it looks like I'm badass, and now I can just do things.
Aside from that, I kind of like the origin. I know we spent a lot of time shitting on it right now, but I think it's okay aside from that.
Like the bit with his dad was brilliant. I loved the relationship. It's like, hey, don't curse. Now who beat the shit out of you? You know, it's just like, it's funny. I like the devil change because it makes, like you said, the homage as Daredevil make a tiny bit more sense as opposed to him just being a Daredevil.
Speaking of homage, we get a lot of homages to comic book creators in this. I'm fine with that normally. It is so fucking heavy-handed in this. So when they're listing his opponents, I think he says Miller, Mac, Bendis, all worked on Daredevil. The weirdest one for me is our villain at one point is named Jose Quesada, aka Joe Quesada, who was a writer at Marvel and one of the heads at Marvel. So basically they named a rapist, seemingly a serial abuser of women, after Joe Quesada. What an honor for him.
I only cop that now, and Jesus. One other person, he obviously cameos later in the movie, but the client who sends them fish is called Mr. Lee.
Yes, he gets, that's weird, he gets homage twice. There's a part where we see his father being killed by a brutal final punch and a rose is left. Yeah, it's the Kingpin. Spoilers. As we have this, as we mentioned, Joe Quesada is testifying in court. This is something that gets way more play in the director's cut. Matt is in court for this person who is basically a woman that's been abused and someone who's also connected to a murder. In that scene, we have him here listening to heartbeats, which he does in court. Basically, he knows this Quesada guy is guilty, but he gets off as innocent. And this leads to our first introduction of Daredevil, as he basically says, I hope justice finds you.
I hope justice is found here today. Before justice finds you.
And they're all drinking and celebrating. And up in the rafters, we get someone up there. And I love how there's like a guy shrouded in black just up there in the fans. And these guys are so badass. They're not like, what the fuck? Or who is this guy? One guy just goes, what do you want? And of course he goes, justice.
What do you want? Justice.
And of course, who is it? Only fucking Matty Murdock himself. Daredevil.
Sorry, the justice and the black, I thought it was someone else. Never mind.
Our first big fight scene is Daredevil. What did you think of this scene? This fight scene?
A lot of it looks bad, but like when you're just listening to it, you see like how it flashes blue every so often as he's making those big connections. I was like, yeah, this is one of the few times it actually feels more close to the Netflix show of like it's in the shadows. He's using, darkness to his advantage. He's just bobbing and weaving through all these guys, and this is really where you get the chance to see that. Like, even if you haven't seen it before, you'd be like, oh, he's a blind superhero. We probably want to fight one guy, and then they just have him take on like 12 guys immediately. And it's just like, no, this guy's a badass.
It's like this movie is never going to win any awards for subtle, but I actually think it's really cool. I mean, it's like green and shaded. They do a lot of those that ramping up, like slow down, speed up. He's like swinging off things. There's sparks and fire, everything. It's like. It feels like no one told Mark Steven Johnson, like, you don't need that much. Pull back a little bit. Like, you don't need the sparks and the fire and the slow motion. By the way, we need to talk about the music at this point because you cannot mention this movie without talking about the soundtrack. If this album didn't sell and they wanted to resell it, they could have just slapped, now that's what I call Naughty's new metal on the cover, and it would have sold just as well. The soundtrack composed of people like Drowning Pool, Pod, Evanescence are in it.
Twice, I think.
The songs on this soundtrack were not released prior to this. They were released on future albums for the band. So this was like where this song broke, apparently.
Which, by the way, is the classic "Bring Me to Life" by Evanescence.
Yes.
I know is the No Way Out 2003 song.
And when he said, just in case people are like, "Bring Me to Life," what one's that one again? "Wake Me Up." That one. It's become obnoxious and overplayed to a certain degree. This is where it gets its play. We're going to talk about how it gets its play.
One bit with the Bring Me to Life part that burst me uncontrollably, and when we get to it, I can't wait to talk about it because it's so on the nose. I'm
not a massive nu metal guy normally. I think I just wasn't into it when it was happening. In retrospect, I can kind of go back and appreciate some of it. I like nu metal, by the way. I want it on the record that I have dressed up as Fred Durst for Halloween. I love nu metal, so this soundtrack's the best part of the movie. I'm slightly annoyed now because at one stage I was going to say, Aaron, I've written down something here as a prediction later on. I'm going to keep it up here, and it was going to be Aaron will love the soundtrack. Yeah, no, I loved it. It was unbelievable. Well, on my first rewatch, I was going to tear the soundtrack apart, and then I was like, second rewatch, I was like, damn, this is kind of rocking. And now I was not ironically listening to the soundtrack of Daredevil earlier, so it's got me, for fuck's sake. This does lead to our scene where Daredevil hunts down Quesada in a subway, throws him in front of the train, and he goes,
"That light at the end of the tunnel, guess what? That's not heaven. I'm killing you. That's the C train."
As the man is torn in half by the train. I should also point out that in the theatrical cut, multiple times he says, "I'm not the bad guy." They didn't put that in the director's cut, and I'm guessing something like this would be why, because holy shit, Daredevil just threw a guy in front of the train and watched him get torn in half. I much prefer where they put the first "I'm not the bad guy" in this version, where it comes later on down the line. It's hard. When I started rewatching the theatrical cut, I got to the scene where he says that because I'd heard there was something like that in it. It comes as he beats the shit out of a guy and a kid walks in and he goes, "I'm not the bad guy." And then, no joke, the following scene, he's on top of the roof in the rain, and again, he's just looking down by himself. And he says, "I'm not the bad guy. I'm not the bad guy." He says it multiple times, as if the audience is like, hey, I know he's doing some fucked up shit, but he's a hero. Here, at least, we just get a cool shot of him in the roof. They don't have him say it. Thankfully, it's slightly more subtle. I'll tell you what's not subtle though. Our next scene, which is the introduction of Ben Urich, played by Joe Pantoliano or Joey Pants or Ralph Cifaretto from The Sopranos. There's our second Sopranos film. Speaking of not subtle, right? At this moment, he's just like, I'm a reporter. He's a big dick reporter swinging it in. The cops are coming in. They're like, you can't belong here. He flashes a badge. And they're like, we don't know if Daredevil was here. And we get the biggest trailer shot of trailer shots where he throws a random spark of fire. I think it's a cigarette. And it lights D in flames behind him.
There is no proof that your so-called Daredevil was involved, nor that he even exists.
This means that Matt Murdock killed a guy as the train pulled into the station, presumably hid while people got off the train, waited for the people to leave the station, waited for the train to depart, got petrol, poured it into a DD perfectly, and then was like, yeah, that's enough, I better go. All while presumably the rotting corpse of Quesada was left on the train tracks.
Yeah, no, and I just want to point out that his craftsmanship is spectacular. It was all so symmetrical.
It's a good thing actually that one reporter knew and not any of the cops. They couldn't smell any fucking petrol or anything, so that was handy.
Wait a minute.
Oh, dude, we could nitpick this whole scene and we would be here hours. It's so stupid. Again, you have to appreciate the stupidity to appreciate this movie.
Like, besides the convolutedness of it all, if you're just some dude in the background, just be like, what's all these cops? I'm waiting for my train, and then a reporter flicks his cigarette. Like, what's going to cause a fire? And then two Ds appear. You're like, that's badass.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I'm sure if I saw a trailer to this when I was younger and it was the Flaming D's, I was like, yeah, Daredevil, show him.
The very next scene, they're in a diner, and in walks fucking Electric Nachos herself, played by Jennifer Garner. Elektra Nachios. If you thought that was a terrible name, wait till you meet her father, Nicholas Nachios.
Classic Marvel double name, same letter.
How do you feel about Elektra as a character? I'll be honest, I do not really care for Elektra at all.
Those eyes when she walks in first.
Yes, go.
She is the Incredible Hulk in disguise. Those things are bioluminescent, bro.
Why are her eyes so green? They're never, like, they're green in the rest of the movie, but they're never that green for the rest of the movie. Both Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner had to wear eye contacts for the purpose of this film because her eye color is not green. And I was googling this. I was like, why did they change her eye color? And I really don't know why they changed her eye color for no real reason, because it's not like Elektra's known for her eyes. But I went onto the early internet. This was a post on, I think it was Audi World Forum for whatever reason. And it says, does Jennifer Garner really have green eyes like in Daredevil, or are they contacts? And this is the question someone asked. I've never actually met someone with eyes like that. Just curious. Oh, and this movie kind of sucks big time.
Yep, that could have easily been.
Why are her eyes green? Bad movie though.
Yeah, it's like why? Like, he was like, I just need to get this out just to be clear. I have a question, but also don't judge me. I hate the film as well. This is also, as we get introduced our love angle, clear evidence that we should, like, Matt Murdock kind of is a bad guy because he hits on Elektra.
Written down he's a creep, objectively.
Like, she like walks off, doesn't say her name. Then he stalks her by smelling her, then catches up to her and grabs her. Fucking, I'm not the bad guy. Our hero, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I have it written down that, like, it's crazy that he followed a woman by her smell and then tried to beat her up.
Do you know what's even funnier about this scene? And this is the infamous playground scene, which everyone hates, loves. There's all these kids watching this. So there's kids cheering, either watching a woman beat up a blind guy or watching a man beat up a woman.
What would have been cool is if the kids start picking sides for the fight and some of them start chanting Daredevil, because then that's the...
See, this is... Dude, we're gonna have to rewrite this movie. We're gonna come up with our own cut of this film somehow.
Back on the phone. Time to put a superhero suit back on.
What did you make of this fight? It's kind of infamously bad for most people.
This movie really needs to sort out what kind of physics Matt Murdock complies to, because he is either running up walls super harshly, like it's as if it's cause it gives super struggle and he's like really tough for doing this, or he's backflipping 10 feet into the air, perfectly balancing on two seesaws.
It involved extensive wire work, this scene. They show. I looked at a little bit of the behind the scenes. It's clearly obvious when you see it. I'll tell you something that's also you won't be able to unsee, and it will explain why this fight scene is maybe slower and more awkward than the rest of them. And the actors are very proud of this. They did this fight scene themselves. There's no stunt doubles in this scene, and I think it kind of shows.
Yeah, it's definitely the slowest of the two, and was the one that I kind of watched and went, why?
It's a shame they tied it so much into their relationship, because if they could have cut this out from the director's cut, it would have come up a few points. It's like just a really awkward, like, slow jumping. They're trying to use the environment but not using it well. It's like, hey, we're on the seesaws. Whoa!
Movie's got no excuse to be bad, by the way, because Spider-Man 2 just came out. So
yeah, this is in the awkward time where, like, after the Spider-Man films came out, people were like, hey, people want superhero movies, whereas they completely ignored that people liked Spider-Man, and they were like, Spider-Man was a good film. They were just like, yeah, people will see any old shit. So we got this in Hulk. And this is where we get the introduction of one of our villains, the Kingpin, played by Michael Clarke Duncan. And I should say this now, I talked about the music. This is one of the on-the-nose choices of music, where it pans up to him looking out the window of his very weird room and tower that we'll talk about. I think it's Fisk Corporation is what it's called. Pans up to him, and and we get the music that's like, I'm an outlaw, I'm quick on the draw.
I'm an outlaw.
Like, it's like, oh, is this the bad guy? It's hilarious.
It would be the modern day equivalent if they showed a villain in a movie and they played fucking Billie Eilish's I'm the Bad Guy. It's like terrible.
I do think Michael Clarke Duncan's probably the best person in this entire film, though.
Yes,
Character portrayal, probably the best. Probably the best captain too.
Like,
Michael Clarke Duncan has such a believability and gravitas, and that voice. He was a fucking perfect Kingpin. And, like, we hear all this bullshit nowadays when someone's like, oh, you have to cast the character as they look because Kingpin's white. Michael Clarke Duncan is the fucking Kingpin. And I don't know if anyone's he forgets skin color. And I saw the director go through this in an extra, and he's dead on the ball. He has every single box you check for Kingpin. He is perfect. I wish it was in a better movie, and I wish he had more to do, but he fucking nails it as far as I'm concerned.
I'm actually a bit of a fan of his ever since seeing The Green Mile, because he's just so good in that. He somehow has this ability to have a very soft-spoken yet intimidating voice at the same time, but not in a creepy soft-spoken way. It's somehow soft and deep at the same time. Mm-hmm. It's incredible. Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin's a gentleman, a man of honor, a man of respect, so on. So this dude's just a gangster and wants to kill people and just, make money. And that's what Kingpin is. I love it.
And then we're into the subplot, which is very egregious in the director's cut, which is that Coolio is kind of tied into this whole plot.
Oh, here it goes.
It's just not a very interesting story. It's like basically, I mean, it's nice to see them do some actual lawyering, and it does tie in a little bit at the end, but
I feel like, if anything, that tie-in at the end in this edit was ham-fisted.
Yeah.
You're just looking at it like, oh, that's why Coolio's here. Because okay.
I had to go back and change my notes because I was so confident. I was like, this Coolio plot doesn't tie into the larger plot, and then I was like, okay, wait, they slightly connected at the end. Never mind. It's like they heard me coming.
You were talking about dated, and nothing could be more dated than the fact that they were like, the amount of THC in his system.
Oh, yeah.
Weed is the most destructive drug in the world.
It's just above cutting to like a lady in the crowd being like, "Whoa!"
Like, you think this guy murdered a woman?
That drug that notoriously makes you very violent, weed.
Yeah.
The reason that they introduce the kind of Nicholas Nachos things is because 2 seconds later, Kingpin basically intends to set up a paper trail so that Nachos looks like the Kingpin. It sort of doesn't pay off that much. We need to talk about the introduction of the best thing about this film. Honestly, I don't think any film would lose out by having this character in it. Basically, he called someone in for a backup, and that person is, and again, a very on-the-nose music choice here when we get the introduction of Bullseye, played by Colin Farrell, who's introduced to a song by, I'm forgetting who, House of Pain. Top of the morning to ya. It literally goes, I'm Irish, top of the morning to ya.
You see I'm Irish, but I'm not a leprechaun. You wanna fight, then step up and we'll get it on.
Again, Subtlety, not a strong suit. Colin Farrell can do an Irish accent, obviously, because he's Irish. But it feels like he's turned it up so much, and that he actually is somehow doing the worst Irish accent despite being Irish and always having an Irish accent anyway.
I was so behind this guy because he's necking a pint, throwing a few darts, and then someone is very obviously xenophobic to him.
The least authentic bit of dialogue I've ever seen in a script.
Well, the Irish piece of trash.
Yeah, they don't say trash.
That introduction scene and every scene with Bullseye, I'm bursting my ass laughing. It is the most entertaining film ever. If there was just a Bullseye cut of this, I would watch it daily and nightly. I fucking love Bullseye in this. He is terrible and so over the top. Endlessly entertaining. He kills this guy for disrespecting him with a paper clip, is it?
Multiple paper
clips, yeah. I can't remember because the paper clips are a big deal for him. He uses them later on as well.
They're in his ear.
That's it, yeah. Also has a big bullseye blazoned across his head. It's
yeah, like just in case you weren't sure who the big bad in Daredevil was going to be.
Oh, I love this era of comic book movies where they're like, oh, they can't wear accurate costumes, that's stupid. No, just put a big bullseye mark on his head. That's okay. He looks like a reject from Love Island, the way he's dressed. He's got like a weird beanie. He's got a leather jacket. One time the leather jacket has it has a perfect hole under his armpits for some reason.
Like a cross between WWE superstar Edge and The Edge.
Yes.
Like, as if they went, Edge, and he went, which one? And they went,
oh my God. Yeah, it's like literally, like they went to the costume designer. You want to look like Edge, and someone's like, oh yeah, WWE, and they were like, no, you too. Like, oh shit.
So I did we'll just put the beanie, the beater, and the jeans on like The Edge, and then just get a big trench coat like Edge the wrestler, and we hope they won't notice. They'll hopefully be too blurred.
I love the commitment to this guy just being an asshole. He's going through airport security. He's going up the escalators, but no, Bullseye isn't subtle enough to just hold onto the handrail. He's coming up the escalators like he's Jesus on the cross, just waiting for someone to say something. Looks around at the top of the elevators if someone's going to say something about his Jesus pose, and then goes through airport security and the metal detector. And of course, he's got a paperclip in his mouth. And they're like, hey, what are you doing? No questions like why you have a paperclip in your mouth. No questions like that. No questions about where you're going. And there's a point where a dog is the only one to say something. A dog goes woof woof. He just stares down the dog, and the dog's like, oh. That is how badass he is. He can get a dog to sit down.
Why do we talk about dancing Peter Parker so much? And why do we not talk about Bullseye walking through an airport? It is majestic.
Oh, this is like the top tier of bad superhero villains in the best way. It's like oh, you just know like he had so much fun. He continues to be a delight on the plane. He's not even listening to the old woman that's rambling racistly next to him. Again, they literally make her say, like, they kind of make him a bit of a hero because she says something horribly racist and then he kills her.
Semi-colored fella from London. What's the word for that? Mulatto, yeah.
He has a peanut. He flicks the peanut off the back of the seat and it goes into her mouth.
And she couldn't use him because her sciatic nerve was acting up. So I said...
And we get, again, this is what I'm on about with his accent being so fucking over the top. I nearly said the waitress, the sky waitress, comes up to him and says, oh, she's sleeping. Would you like anything? And he goes, more peanuts, please.
Can I get you anything before we land?
More peanuts, please.
Yeah, that is the start, well, not the end, thankfully, of Bullseye. There's a scene on the rooftops where he's talking to Elektra, and we have the rain hitting off her, and because of that, he can see her face.
That moment where he takes the glasses off to see the rain hitting her face so he can make an image of her face was very well.
It's really, I think for me, this is sort of like idea versus execution again, where it's like they had a great idea. The CGI can be a little bit dodgy. It kind of feels like they saw The Matrix and they were like, yeah, something like that. The cheesiest, most obvious filmmaking tool ever, where they're like, he can see her face because it's raining. He can see her. He's getting on with her. And then later on, when he's falling out with her, there's a moment where you see her face and she has an umbrella, so he can't see her face. They're not connecting.
You see him seeing her face, but now he can immediately see her face, by the way. So now we're seeing it from his perspective, and it's almost as if it's the last shot of her face, dead on exact. As the umbrella comes up, it slowly fades just into darkness, and it's just... Oh.
When Scorsese talks about cinema, this is what he means. Show him this and he will just be silent forever, man. It's amazing. We get something I should like. Again, it's badly executed. And I think they have, again, the inspiration for Batman here. The villain dynamic between a superhero and a superhero's alter ego and the villain is really well done in the first Batman movie, and I think a lot of movies try to kind of try and copy that, whereas in Tim Burton's Batman we get the regular Joker meeting Batman, as in Jack Napier I should say, meeting Batman. Then we have Bruce Wayne meeting the Joker.
Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts. That's a lot of nuts!
And then finally the alter egos meet. I think they wanted to do that here at some point, but it feels like they just didn't put any investment into Kingpin and Daredevil having much of a relationship. But we have a scene where they're at the ball, and it's like it's Matt Murdock meeting Kingpin, but it's basically just like, hey, I don't represent you, I only represent the innocent. Oh snap! And that's kind of it, and that's how they build the conflict. Really, it's pretty lame.
Yeah, it was kind of lame. Like there was, because like at the start as well, there's no point where he figures out who the Kingpin is. He just seems to kind of already know. Now I know that's because he knows who killed his dad and the rose is meant to be really symbolic as to who it is throughout the entire thing. But like, it's just, I feel like Matt Murdock met Wilson Fisk and the Kingpin at the same time, whereas Wilson Fisk met Matt Murdock, then Daredevil, and never even put it together himself. It wasn't until the very end when he takes the mask off, he's like, no way.
It's really a symptom of what a bigger issue with this movie is, which is that it tries to do too much. Like, if the weirdest thing to think about here, right? We got Kingpin, Elektra, and Bullseye. That is the first 3 seasons of the Daredevil TV show. And it is crammed into one movie here. Like, when people talk about, like, contained story arcs of Daredevil, it's always The Man Without Fear and Born Again. And that's because those can be taken as, like, 5 or 6 issue chunks. The best Daredevil stuff is a massive running narrative.
Too many elements. It suffers from the same thing Spider-Man 3 would later suffer from. You know, just too many villains, too many plots trying to go along. There's not enough time. Like you said, Daredevil does definitely work best as a long form kind of story, and I think the reason that is because of how small time he is, especially being in Hell's Kitchen. Like, it's personal, it's small time, it's your local area doing what you can for your area, which is why I think a movie would never have worked and why the series did so well, because it's a more personal long form narrative as opposed to a general smash and grab, you know.
Nicholas Nachos is in the Kingpin's crosshair. He sends Bullseye after him, and he really convolutedly frames Daredevil with this. He throws the cane, which ends up killing Nicholas Nachos, and Elektra thinks it's Daredevil. This is where we get the whole I'm Bullseye thing again.
Bullseye. Who am I? I'm Bullseye.
Also, interestingly, killing with the cane is a reference to a very recent Daredevil comic in that timeline. It's a reference to how Kevin Smith got Bullseye to kill Karen Page with the cane, and then therefore it's very suitable that the cane ends up in the hands of Kevin Smith, who is playing... this is the worst comic homage in all of them. He's playing Jack Kirby. Subtle. He has the cane. He's like basically showing the reporter, hey, this is what the cane does, and that's all it takes for him to realise that Matt Murdock is Daredevil. Ben Affleck is Matt Murdock, is Daredevil. There we go. Kingpin now telling Bullseye to kill Elektra. Kingpin tells Bullseye he's like really happy with his work, and he's like, is there anything you need? And Bullseye says, I need a fucking costume.
I want a fucking costume.
He doesn't get a costume.
He gets a pretty sweet kimono.
I don't know. It seems like he got a slightly darker jacket and he was happy with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, you need a costume. He's like, hey, I got a pretty sweet coat. There's no armpit hole. There's an armpit hole in it. You'll love it, mate.
Colin Farrell ripped the jacket by mistake and they're like, no, run with this.
Like, no, that's perfect. That's perfect for the douche look.
In case you need to air your armpits. That's why he's always going like this coming up the escalator. He's like, oh, get that breeze in.
He did it on the bike, riding the bike. He just arms out.
Elektra fights Daredevil because she thinks that he killed her father, which is where we get the evanescence scene where she does her training in a house with sandbags falling from the roof.
There's one line in Bring Me to Life, which is, all this time I can't believe I couldn't see, kept in the dark, but you were there in front of me. And it's like the only time they cut to Daredevil. I was like, how on the nose could you be all this time I can't believe he couldn't see? I can't believe he can't see, because he spent the entire movie telling me he's blind.
They get into a big fight on a rooftop. Daredevil gets stabbed by Elektra's eye, and they take off the mask, realizing it is Matt Murdock. And just at this moment, we get creepy old Bullseye, who's like whistling away at her like a real creep. What is even creepier is they get in a big fight scene. She throws her sai at Bullseye. Bullseye catches it like that, really impressively. And I guess she was like, yeah, that ain't shit, I can do that too. And she tries to catch it and it just goes right through her hand. And she's like, oh.
It looked like she jumped 40 feet at one stage across roofs and then really ruined it by showing her land. And you see the other roof is like 2 feet behind where she lands. And it's like, oh, you could have stepped over that. You know, there was no need for the jump.
Elektra gets stabbed by Bullseye. She's killed. It's straight out of the comics. Bullseye, again, being a bit creepy, kind of gives her a weird kind of hover kind of kiss. He's like, ugh. I should mention as well, we get a great reading when they do fight on the rooftop scene, which is like straight out of a soap opera, where Daredevil is like, goes to Elektra, I didn't kill your father. And she just goes, liar. It's amazing.
I didn't kill your father.
Liar.
We get the other soap opera reveal where she rips the mask off him and she's like, oh, no. It's like, oh, how could this be? It's like, well, you know, you knew this guy liked rooftops, I guess. I don't know.
This guy liked rooftops. You've also seen this blind man balance on 2 seesaws.
Bullseye apparently can do magic. It's not good magic. It's just like, you know, where they're like, oh, what's this behind my hand? And he's got a magic card. And they only do that so he can have a one-liner where he says, time for my next trick.
He also says, you're good, but I'm magic. We get 2 one-liners out of this bit.
We cut back to Matt being wounded, and this is how he ends up at the start of the movie again, being helped by the priest, or as we call him, Padre, because Bullseye enters the church and he's like, hey, Padre, heh. He just shoots a shot at him. He's like, the first one's a warning, Padre, heh.
First one's a warning. Padre.
We then get a fight in the church scene between Bullseye and Daredevil, which is gloriously cheesy. It's a big old slap fight. They're fighting all over the place, fighting on the organs, swinging off the organs.
This is where I bring back my point of they wanted to make a Batman movie.
Very obvious here because there's bats fly out of them at one point.
I was just like, okay, no, this dude, if I wasn't convinced, I was like, this is meant to be a Batman movie.
Bullseye is throwing everything he has at him. He has like this, again, this douchey kind of belt. He throws all the shurikens off his belt. He then does an amazing move, and again, this is where you have to recognize this movie as being a cheesy masterpiece. He smashes stained glass, catches it all really like cheekily, and then starts chucking it at him like this. He really realizes very quickly that Matt doesn't like sound. And because of that, he starts like making a lot of noise, ringing the bell and stuff.
Venom.
I was going to say that this is Venom.
Kill this guy, just hit something really hard to make it loud. Kills Daredevils and Venoms. Don't worry.
He rings the bell, and then it cuts back to him, and he's got a fucking candelabra. he's just doing whatever he wants. And he starts licking his lips and rolling his neck and touching his forehead like a pure creep.
Let's bring on the pain. Let's bring on the noise.
He gives up Fisk for no reason. He's basically like, now is the time to reveal my evil plan. And then we get, again, they put a weird Jesus reference, I think. Matt hears a rifle going off outside. So he moves Kingpin into the way. He gets a bullet through both his hands, so he has stigmata hands. Again, we've seen him do the Jesus pose the whole movie. And then Matt picks him up and throws him out the window. It looks terrible. He does a really awkward turn in the air as well, if you look at the way it's edited.
Show mercy.
And lands on a car, seemingly dead. He's not dead, but he's seemingly dead. So he takes this exact moment to go after Kingpin now. We see Kingpin just basically, again, this is why Kingpin is so badass in this movie. He's like, he knows Daredevil's coming, and your man's like, hey, you know what, you better like get out of here, he's coming. And he just goes something like, I'm from the Bronx, and he takes off his fucking thing, and he's fucking yoked to the max, suspenders, tank top. He's like, let's go.
He goes, he's coming here, and he goes, how do you know? And he goes, because it's what I do. And I was like, that's badass.
He's a fucking gangster, man.
Badass.
I didn't talk about it earlier, but like the way his office looks, it looks like a tanning salon. It's like all fluorescent blue lights everywhere. And it's very questionable, this room, because as Daredevil finally approaches him, remember, we should remember, water makes Daredevil see everything. And first 2 times I watched this, I was convinced that as they get in the fight scene, the reason, like, Daredevil gets his ass kicked first, and then he's kind of looking up at him, and he realizes that there's a source of water in the room. First 2 times I saw this, I thought the sprinkler system went off, but then when I watch it again, this room makes no sense. There's literally water flowing around the floors, there's water flowing up the walls, there's water flowing from the ceiling. It's just a room encased in water tubes for no discernible reason except for this fight scene to make sense. There's more water in this scene than Aquaman, the whole film.
It makes perfect sense. It's the early 2000s. He obviously has to have a water feature in his office.
He was like, I don't want the water in my office, I want it around my office. They have a really big, vicious fight. What did you make of the final fight scene? The final showdown?
Awesome. Like that final shot, the double knee, made me puke. Like, it is probably the most brutal he is all movie, despite the fact, yeah, he cut a guy in half. Well, he didn't really cut a guy in half on a train, threw a guy in his train track.
Yeah, he just happened to be on the train tracks.
You see him mess someone seriously up. Like, yeah, he pulls his hands in, but he's not the one to pull the... He just is using things to his advantage throughout the entire movie, using his heightened senses to put people in situations where they're going to get hit. This is like the first time, and it's a shame it's at the very, like the literal end of the movie is the most vicious part where he just, I'm pretty sure, breaks both his knees.
Yeah, it's really brutal. I kind of wish it was a bit longer of a fight scene, but it is a really brutal, really good fight scene. And I should point out, it's very wet. There's water everywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Clark Duncan is wearing white, so you know what I'm saying? We're eating prime beef tonight, is what I'm saying. So yeah, that's our big fight scene. He defeats the Kingpin. We get a moment where he basically says, like, you know, I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to spare your life. He just threw you know, Bullseye out a church window, and I mean, I assume he knew he probably hears heartbeat, but he also, again, Joe Quesada got worse than anyone in this movie when he got killed by a train, but Kingpin gets to live. But we do get the sort of moment where it makes sense why he won't give up who Daredevil is as he goes to prison.
I swear I'll tell him who you are.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell him. Tell the guys at Rikers all about how you got beat by a blind man.
And it's like, oh, shit.
I thought that was a bit stupid.
It is.
I'm going to tell everyone, well, you got your ass kicked by a blind guy. I'm going to go, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to tell everybody who you are because, yeah, I got my ass kicked by a blind guy.
Yeah.
So they don't want to get their ass kicked by the blind guy. So if I tell them who you are, we're all going to team up.
I just think that exchange in general is so hilariously childish, where it's like, I'm going to tell everyone who you are. Oh, well, I'm going to say you got your ass kicked by a blind guy. It's like, ooh, it's so hilariously over the top and cheesy. Good news for everyone. As sure everyone was on tenterhooks. Coolio was free, everyone. It turns out that he didn't do it, baby. That's right, Keenan and Kel's own Coolio is free, thank God.
Oh, here it goes.
As it turns out, everyone is alive. Bullseye is in a hospital bed. He's killed a fly with a syringe. He's alive, great. He can return for Daredevil 2 any day now. Kingpin obviously is in prison. And even Elektra is fine, because we see a scene where Matt comes to the rooftop and the necklace he gave her earlier has some braille on it. She's alive. Again, reminds me of Batman Returns a bit, where it's like, oh, there's Catwoman on the rooftop.
She's fine.
Arguably the most comic book thing this movie did. Not kill anyone, really.
They didn't even leave you like in suspense for like 2 seconds. It's like, they're grand, never mind. But a reporter, as I mentioned, he grapples with the idea of telling the world that Matt Murdock is Daredevil, but he doesn't. Which we get really, he's like, it's on his computer, and like, this is one of these minor nitpicks where I'm like, come on, man. He deletes the whole thing character by character instead of just highlighting and deleting it, because I guess that's not cinematic enough. We get another reflection in his glasses, thank God, before our movie ends with him saying he's a guardian devil. We get a slow motion shot of him firing at screen, and it ends.
The reporter writes, a hero named Matt Murdock, or something like that, and then deletes it all. Watches everything he wrote go away. Would have been much nicer if he just gets rid of the name Matt Murdock and it's a hero without fear.
Yeah.
Or a man named Matt Murdock and gets rid of it and goes, it's our hero is a man without fear.
Yeah, he's an overly dramatic bitch, alright.
Go get him, Matt.
Some dude down the road just like saw Daredevil and then heard this guy say, go get him, Matt, and was like, wait a minute.
And can I just take this moment, and I'm not sure if you can relate to this, but how lame is it to have an alter ego named Matt?
Oh. Terrible.
Boom.
It's the worst.
Oh, I was trying to squeeze that in the whole time.
Right, that's it. I'm out of here. Right, nice.
Aaron, what did you make of Daredevil 2003, the director's cut?
I went from thinking this movie was fine as a kid to hating it as a teenager to ultimately thinking it's not that bad as an adult. It's actually fine. Like, it's not going to set the world on fire, and it's not something that if someone who never saw a superhero movie before was like, I need to watch one, I wouldn't be like, yeah, watch Daredevil. But if me and a few friends just wanted to have a few cans, chill out, and watch a movie that we could make fun of, or that we could just have on in the background and not really pay that much attention to, Daredevil's perfect for that. Like, it's entertaining bits. Parts of it are fun.
Like, it's no worse than some of the other early 2000 superhero films. It kind of gets a bad rap for me. I think the director's cut especially has a lot of good elements. It's a film that tried to do too much and totally lacks subtlety, and I do think what you said is exactly accurate. I think if you gather around a group of friends, you're going to enjoy the hell out of this movie. Even though parts of it are so bad, it is so entertaining at times that there's no way you won't enjoy it, even if you can appreciate it for its kind of campy, weird value. And it does stride that really awkward line between wanting to be really dark and also being so incredibly cheesy and campy, which just don't go together, and that's why, for me, it's a glorious mess.
Based on what I remember from the theatrical release versus this release, I have a sneaky suspicion that a director wanted to do a dark movie and a studio wanted to do a kids movie, and they had to awkwardly meet somewhere in the middle.
I think you're exactly right. I think I saw something about that in one of the commentaries as well or something. I think he says that, and I think there was like a whole feature on the DVD where he's trying to defend releasing the theatrical cut. It's really awkward.
My personal feeling is I was advocating speed over well shot, well acted, well directed, well performed scenes, but that we're going to overall slow down the movement of the film. I don't think in the commercial marketplace that, you know, the intellectual content necessarily is as important as the quick, exciting experience of this kind of a movie.
But it is enjoyable. I should mention, look, we're tying this into the multiverse, of course. Daredevil, they never gave it a sequel. There was Elektra. They then, for ages, tried to kick around an even darker version of Daredevil. Someday I really, really want to talk about Joe Carnahan's failed Daredevil pitch that never took off. And Marvel actually didn't really want Daredevil back. In fact, when the rights were about to lapse to Fox, they tried to cut a deal with Fox that if they were allowed to use Silver Surfer and Galactus, they could keep Daredevil for a bit longer. Fox didn't go with it, and they ended up getting back Daredevil, which of course led to the Netflix series with Charlie Cox, and now brought him into the MCU with Spider-Man No Way Home, which is bringing us up to the current timeline. I should also mention, because someone's going to say in the comments otherwise, yes, Jon Favreau has been in the scene with both Daredevils. There you go. Thank you. That is where we're going to leave it. That was us being into the multiverse with Daredevil. I want to thank Aaron for joining me. Aaron, let the people know, where can they find you?
Find me on Twitter at MattSkylerPW_, and I believe on Instagram at MattSkyler with an E, by the way. The Skyler's with an E _PW.
Thank you for joining me, dude. I appreciate having you on. It's always great having you on the channel. Hopefully we'll have you back someday soon.
Absolutely. Oh God, Scooby-Doo, here we go.
Either way, guys, thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and make sure to subscribe, because we're not done with our Multiverse of Badness here. And of course, plenty more Marvel stuff and much more on the channel. Either way, I've been your cult leader, Tompa. Thank you for watching. And remember, I'll be watching. Take care.